"You're not our real dad. We're better off without you." Those words were not spat at me by strangers, nor muttered by coworkers behind my back. They came from within my own house, from the girls I clothed, fed, guided, and carried on my back for almost a decade. From Emily and Claire, the daughters I thought I had earned, the daughters I thought bore my name not only on paper but in their hearts. But before those words were ever spoken, before they cut into me like a blade that had been sharpened in secret, there was a beginning where I believed in family. When I met Karen, she was already a mother of two. Jason, her first husband, their biological father, had vanished into a haze of excuses and fleeting appearances. A holiday gift here, a weekend visit there, then gone again, swallowed by whatever life he preferred to us. He was a shadow that visited like a guest star in their lives, never paying bills, never staying long enough to carry the weight of fatherhood. And me? I took the weight onto my shoulders as if I had been born to it. I didn't hesitate. When Karen said she struggled with the girls' school fees, I wrote the checks. When Claire's asthma flared, it was me in the ER signing insurance papers. When Emily needed help with math homework, it was me hunched over the kitchen table, explaining fractions long past midnight while the rest of the house slept. Little by little, piece by piece, I replaced Jason. Not with words, not with declarations, but with presence. I showed up. I stayed. I carried. And eventually I went further. I signed adoption papers. I gave them my last name. I wanted them to know, not just think, not just hope, that they belonged, that they were mine. To cement that belonging, I built a home for us. Dallas suburbs, a 2-story house with wide windows and a backyard big enough for both play and family gatherings. I made sure each girl had her own room, decorated as she pleased. Claire plastered hers with soccer posters. Emily painted hers with pastel colors and glittering fairy lights. I turned the garage into a small gym so they could grow strong. Turned a spare room into a game space with shelves of board games and a second-hand console they screamed with joy over. It wasn't just walls and furniture. It was the future I tried to carve. I saved diligently, funneling money into their college funds. Month after month, I set aside what I could, telling myself that no matter what happened, they would never know the chains of debt that strangled so many. I wanted them free, unburdened, able to walk into life with doors already open. Vacations? Paid. Summer camps? Paid. Tutors when grades slipped, doctors when health wavered, braces when teeth needed correction, all me. All carried by my labor, my sweat, my hours stolen from myself and poured into them. And in return, for a time, I believed I was loved. They called me Dad in those early years. They ran to me with their schoolwork, showed me their drawings, asked me to sit in the audience during every recital and match. I heard their laughter echo in the house I had bought, and I thought, it was worth it. Every sacrifice, every hour, every dollar. Even Karen looked at me in those first years with something close to gratitude. She would put her hand on mine during dinners and whisper, "Thank you for doing this for us. Not for me, for us." And I carried that word like a banner. Family. I told myself I had made it. That blood wasn't the defining line. That love could be earned by steady devotion. That if I just kept showing up, if I just kept giving, if I kept shouldering the weight that Jason had abandoned, eventually they would see me as more than the man who married their mother. I thought I had beaten the odds. Stepfathers don't always get the title of dad. But I thought I had. For years, it seemed true. We celebrated birthdays together, cake smeared across faces. Christmas mornings were filled with wrapping paper explosions and shouts of joy. I was the one assembling toys late at night, batteries scattered across the floor, just so they could wake up to wonder. We had traditions. Friday pizza nights, Sunday drives, bedtime stories where Claire would fall asleep on the couch before I could finish, and I'd carry her upstairs, her arms draped around my neck. In those moments, I believed. I truly believed. But even in those bright years, there were shadows. Jason would resurface from time to time, bearing gifts more expensive than anything I could offer. Shiny, flashy, extravagant. A new phone, a designer handbag, tickets to a concert. He appeared like a magician pulling wonders from thin air, and for a few days he was the hero, the cool dad, the man who never said no. And then he was gone again, leaving me to pick up the pieces. The bills, the routines, the discipline, the work of daily fatherhood, invisible compared to his grand gestures. I told myself it didn't matter, that what I gave, consistency, reliability, was worth more than his temporary magic. That children know, deep down, who is truly there for them, that they would grow up and understand. So I kept pouring myself into them. Camp fees, soccer uniforms, cheerleading trips, piano lessons. I cheered in the bleachers, clapped in auditoriums, stood in line at clinics. My life became theirs, and slowly my own needs dissolved. I stopped buying things for myself. I worked longer hours, canceled outings, gave up hobbies, because their futures were more important, because family comes first. That's what I told myself, again and again. Family comes first. For those first years, it looked real. From the outside, no one could have guessed we weren't bound by blood. Neighbors saw us as the model family. A hardworking father, a grateful mother, 2 bright daughters with every opportunity ahead. And inside, I clung to that image as if it were truth. I believed the laughter, the "I love you, Dad," the hugs before school. I let those words erase every doubt, every hint of Jason's shadow. But what I didn't realize, what I refused to see, was that shadows never truly vanish. They linger, they wait, and one day they come back. Jason came back like a storm that had been gathering over the horizon for years. Sudden, loud, impossible to ignore. It started with whispers from the girls. Emily mentioned that Dad was back in town. Claire slipped once, calling him cool, as if the word itself was a revelation. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was secure, that blood could not undo years of devotion. But I was wrong. Blood was exactly the knife pressed against everything I had built. Jason didn't reappear with apologies or humility. He came back with style. Dinners at expensive restaurants, selfies from weekend trips, shiny gifts that screamed indulgence. He positioned himself not as a father, but as an entertainer. He let them eat dessert first, skipped curfews, bought things I would have never justified. He was the fun one, the free one, the one without rules. And slowly, his words crept into their mouths. Our real father allows more. You're too strict. Dad says you don't get it. At first, I laughed it off, telling myself it was a phase. Teenagers push boundaries. They test authority. It was normal, I said. But it wasn't normal, it was deliberate. Jason was digging himself into their hearts by undermining me at every turn. The shift was small at first. Emily rolling her eyes when I asked about homework. Claire muttering under her breath when I reminded her to clean up. But then it grew. Invitations to family dinner were met with silence. My advice was dismissed outright. My presence was tolerated, not welcomed. And Karen? She said nothing. Her silence was a betrayal as sharp as theirs. She watched it unfold and folded her hands in her lap. When the girls contradicted me, she stayed quiet. When they praised Jason in front of me, she looked away. Not once did she say, "Respect the man who raised you." Not once did she stand between me and the erosion of authority. I kept waiting for her to defend me. She never did. The house I had built began to feel foreign, like I was trespassing in my own rooms. Conversations happened around me, never with me. Laughter echoed from upstairs when Jason texted them, while I sat downstairs staring at the walls. I had given them my name, but their loyalty still belonged to him. One evening, it all crystallized. We were in the living room, a family evening, or what was supposed to pass for one. The girls were on the couch, giggling at something on their phones. I asked them to set the table for dinner. They didn't move. Karen glanced at me, then back at the TV, her lips sealed. I repeated myself. Emily, Claire, go set the table. They exchanged a look, a conspiratorial smile. And then Emily said it, light, mocking, but sharp as glass. We're better off without you. You're not needed here. Claire laughed, nodding, as if the words were a joke between sisters. A joke that excluded me. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I stood in the very house I bought, filled with furniture I paid for, beneath a roof I kept over their heads, and they told me I was unnecessary. Disposable. Karen didn't say a word. She stared at the carpet, pretending not to hear. That was the moment, the line, the breaking point where illusion shattered. Because I realized, with a clarity colder than ice, no matter how many years I had given, no matter how much money I had spent, no matter the papers signed or the name they bore, I would always be an outsider, a substitute, a man who poured his life into people who never intended to see him as theirs. It wasn't anger that filled me. It was emptiness, a hollow space where love had lived, now gutted clean. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I didn't beg Karen to speak. I only looked at them, at the daughters I thought I had raised, and saw strangers wearing the faces of children I once carried on my shoulders. That night, I lay in bed beside Karen, staring at the ceiling while she scrolled her phone. She didn't mention what had happened. She didn't ask if I was hurt. She didn't even look at me. And in her silence, I heard everything. I heard that she chose peace over respect, that she would rather protect her daughter's fragile loyalty to Jason than defend the man who had carried them for nearly a decade, that she would rather I remain the provider than the father. The next morning, I rose early. I went to work, came home, ate in silence. But inside me, something had shifted, something final. It wasn't rage. Rage burns out. This was colder, deeper, permanent. It was the realization that my years of sacrifice were not an investment. They were a donation, a gift taken for granted, a ledger of labor and love written in disappearing ink. And once I saw it, I could never unsee it. They had told me I was not needed. They had laughed as they said it. And I believed them. That belief would become my we*p*n. That belief would become my freedom. The morning after their words, I stopped being their father. Not with a declaration, not with a fight, but with a decision. If I was not needed, then I would no longer give. I had always believed love meant sacrifice. But that night in the living room, when Emily's laugh rang out like a blade against me, I finally understood. Sacrifice without respect is slavery, and I had been enslaved for 8 years. So I began cutting the chains. First came the money. Their lives had been built entirely on the flow of my labor. Monthly tuition payments, camp deposits, soccer fees, doctor bills, the endless stream of quiet transfers that made their world stable. I stopped them all. With one phone call, I removed their names from my health insurance. With another, I canceled recurring payments for activities, lessons, and clubs. I logged into the bank and shut down every automatic draft tied to their names. Then I went further. I opened the locked drawer in my office and pulled out the thick folder I had been keeping for years. Receipts, invoices, insurance statements, school bills, every document proving the money I had poured into them. 8 years of meticulous records, almost $300,000 spent. Every dollar traceable. Every expense undeniable. I copied them, one set for Karen, one for Jason, one for the girls themselves. A ledger of truth, a map of what they had taken. When I handed the folders over, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain. I only said, "This is the cost of what you've lost." The reaction was immediate. Emily was the first to feel it. Weeks earlier, she had been accepted into a prestigious college, the kind of school that promised a bright, glittering future. She had been proud, her acceptance letter pinned to her wall like a trophy. But pride means nothing without payment. When the deposit was withdrawn from the college fund, her place vanished. The letter that once made her smile turned into a reminder of what she would never have. Her tears filled the house. She shouted, begged, blamed. But every word only deepened my resolve. Claire's world collapsed next. Soccer had been her passion, her identity. Uniforms, training, travel, all of it required money. Without my payments, she was cut from the team. Her friends went on to tournaments while she stayed home, scrolling through pictures of games she could no longer play. I watched her slam her bedroom door, heard her muffled sobs through the walls. But I did not move. because I remembered her laughter when she said I was not needed. Karen was slower to crumble, but when the mortgage notice arrived, reality bared its teeth. My income had been the pillar holding up the Dallas house. Without it, the numbers didn't work. Bills stacked, debts sharpened. Within months, she packed boxes and signed a lease for a rental apartment. Smaller, dimmer, with no game room, no backyard, no gym in the garage. The life she had boasted about to friends shrank into something fragile and temporary. And Jason, he had always been the ghost, the one who appeared with gifts but never responsibility. But ghosts cannot carry weight. With Karen's move, Emily and Claire turned more often to him. He squeezed them into his 2-bedroom rental, where his paycheck barely covered food. The shine of his expensive dinners dulled quickly when faced with reality. Bills, groceries, necessities he couldn't afford. I imagine the girls looked at him then and saw the truth. The cool dad, the fun dad, the one who never said no. He was also the dad who could not provide. The dad who vanished when money was needed. But by then it was too late. I had walked away. Karen tried to argue, tried to guilt me into returning. "They're just kids," she said. "They didn't mean it." She begged me to reconsider, to think of their futures, to be the man I had always been, the provider, the silent foundation. But I only shook my head. 8 years, Karen, I told her. 8 years I gave everything. And in the end, your silence told me what I truly was. A wallet. Not a father. Not a husband. Just a man to bleed dry. She cried then, angry tears, desperate tears. But tears cannot erase betrayal. The girls wrote letters too. Handwritten apologies. Shaky words begging me to come back. Emily promised to study harder. Claire promised to show respect. They filled page after page with regret. But I did not respond. Because regret after consequence is not repentance. It is survival. They did not miss me. They missed the comfort I provided, the life I built. Their sorrow was for themselves, not for me. So I stayed silent. And my silence spoke louder than any word. I moved to San Antonio soon after, into a clean apartment that was mine alone. No echoes of laughter that turned into mockery. No shadows of daughters who called me unnecessary. No wife who stayed silent while I was dismantled in my own home. For the first time in years I felt free. Not happy, not triumphant, just free. Behind me, the family I had carried collapsed into the consequences of their choices. Emily without her college, Claire without her sport, Karen without her house, Jason with bills he could never pay. They had told me I was not needed. And then, when I left, they finally understood what I had been. Not needed until I was gone. After everything fell apart, the silence was what struck me most. No more slammed doors. No more laughter followed by whispers that excluded me. No more evenings where Karen sat in silence while her daughters cut me down. The house in Dallas had been noisy with contempt. San Antonio was quiet with clarity. But silence does not mean absence. Letters arrived. Messages, calls, emails. At first, they were full of anger. Emily accusing me of betrayal, Claire demanding answers. Then came the apologies, clumsy and rushed, as if words could glue back years of cracks. "We're sorry, Dad," Emily wrote once, her handwriting trembling across the page. "Please help us. Please come back." But apologies are cheap when they follow consequences. They did not regret what they said. They regretted losing the world I had built for them. Their pain was not for me. It was for themselves. So I did not reply. Karen tried to. She called late at night, her voice raw from crying. "You don't understand, Michael. They're just kids. They don't know the weight of their words." But she knew. She had known every time she sat silent as they mocked me. Every time she chose peace over respect. Every time she let Jason be idolized while I was diminished. And Jason, he vanished into the mess he had helped create. He tried at first, picking the girls up, cooking meals in his cramped kitchen, pretending to hold the role he had abandoned years ago. But bills piled faster than his paychecks. Emily's college was gone, Claire's soccer dream buried, and soon enough, the shine of his return dulled into resentment. The cool dad was just another man struggling to pay for groceries. The girls learned the truth I had always known. Jason was a visitor, not a father. But by the time they saw it, I had already stepped away. I built a new life in San Antonio. Nothing extravagant, just a small home, quiet, uncluttered, mine. No pictures of a family that rejected me, no reminders of sacrifices unacknowledged. My life no longer revolved around being useful to people who called me unnecessary. And there was someone new, a woman without children, without shadows of another man haunting our life. She saw me as I was, not as a wallet, not as a replacement, but as a man. For the first time in years, I was not defined by what I gave. I was seen. It was then I realized something that burned as much as it freed me. Love cannot be bought. Respect cannot be forced. Sacrifice without recognition is just slow self-destruction. 8 years. Almost $300,000. Countless nights of labor, countless days of presence. And in the end, all of it could be erased with a single sentence. We're better off without you. They were wrong, of course. They were not better off. Without me, their world collapsed. But sometimes collapse is the only way for people to understand the foundation they stood on. The girls tried again. More letters. More tears. Promises to change, to behave differently, to respect me if only I would return. But I knew the truth. If I gave in, if I returned to that house, nothing would change. They would take and I would give. They would laugh and Karen would stay silent. Jason would reappear with gifts, and I would be invisible again. So I refused. Not out of cruelty, but out of survival. Because once someone tells you to your face that you are not needed, you either break, or you learn to live as though they are right. And I chose to live. Do I regret the years? Sometimes. I think of the nights I carried Claire upstairs, the mornings Emily ran to show me her drawings, the family dinners where laughter seemed real. I wonder if any of it meant something, if in those fleeting moments I truly was their father. Or if it was always an illusion, a story I told myself to justify sacrifice. But I cannot live in regret. What's done is done. What's given is gone. Now, when I look back, I see it with the clarity of hindsight. I was not a father to them. I was a provider, a convenient stand-in until the real father returned with gifts and charm. And when he came, they showed me the truth that I was never theirs. So I walked away. I live now with no illusions, no debts, no chains. The money I earn goes into my own life, my own peace. The woman beside me sees me as a partner, not a paycheck. The silence in my home is not emptiness, it is freedom. And yet, late at night, when the world quiets, I hear their voices sometimes. Not the laughter, not the apologies, just the cruel sentence that ended it all. You're not needed here. I answered it with my actions. I left. I took back my life. And in doing so, I showed them the true cost of their words. Now I ask you, was I wrong? Was I heartless to leave them in the ruins of their own contempt? Or was it the only way to prove that respect is not optional, that love without respect is slavery, and that sometimes the only way to teach value is to let people lose you completely? Tell me, what would you have done?